don't know what this is yet. I do know that I want a video diary that's different from the podcast. I really want to transition the podcast to being like essay style pop culture and not really have my life in it very much. Essentially, I'm envisioning this year as me really building up my Substack, and part of that is video content because that's like where I feel really comfortable. I mean, I feel really comfortable with writing too, but I really like having a video diary, and I like having a visual record of things that have happened in my life. So this is me starting that. It is different from the podcast in that I'm not really going to talk about current events unless they have really personally impacted me, and most of it is going to be about my life. So this first one, totally different situation than the podcast, very casual. We're really just having fun today. We're going to be talking about the books that I read last year, and this is going to be really informal. I have all or most of them sitting next to me. I think there's a few that I'm going to have to remember off the top of my head. And, I really like watching stuff like this. I like seeing the things people have read. I like hearing about it. And, we're going to do a tier list. Here, this is my tier list right here. I'm going to make up the categories right now. So let's see what I can do improv style on that. Let's do F is, this is such meth behavior. What's that Wendy Williams one? Clap if you're suffering? Yeah.
Should she suffer? All right, clap if you think she should suffer.
Actually, let's switch those. F is clap if you're suffering. D is this is such meth behavior. Because there's like, sometimes this is such meth behavior is like fun. You know what I mean? Like, it's not condoning any of the events of January 6th. I would never do that. It's interesting. At least it's something to talk about. Clap if you're suffering is just like, C is gonna be, what's like another little gay meme for me to, C is gonna be, just because this is a personal favorite for me, it's buying a disabled dog all the treats that she wants at the store. This means that it wasn't perfect, but there were redeeming qualities, and we tried really hard, and we had a good time. So C is still like, we're good, we're fine. Like, it was worth a read. B is Addison Rae reading a book on the street. This means I was hooked. I had a good time. It's, maybe it's not my favorite book of all time, but like, I was there, I was in. She is more than worth a read. Like, I would totally recommend it. A is also one of my favorite memes of the year. Miscellaneous unks shooting poison on stage. This means that I had a really good time. This means like I was the unk and Janet Jackson is the book. It had me like shook. Like, it had me like doing gyrations on a public stage. That's our ranking system. Let's get into my books. I have my phone stacked right now on top of a bunch of books, and 2 of those books are the books that I read. There's my dog, by the way. So one of the first books I actually read this year was Didion and Babbitts by Lily Anilick. And this is in like no particular order. It's just literally the order in which they are sitting next to me or pop in my head. So we're gonna get through all 20, I think I read 23 books, which is pretty good for me. It's more than last year. Last year I read 20 even. My reading goal was to read more than 20 and I hit it. So that's pretty awesome. Overall reading goal that I had as well, thematically, was to read books about older women. I feel like I had been reading a lot of books about women my age or younger, and I just wanted to branch out, learn a little more about what's in store for me in the next 30 years. I think I also did really well on that. I think I have a more well-rounded understanding of menopause, just what it means to age out of certain expectations for yourself, but also age out of expectations that others have for you, which is like good and bad. But the first book on this list is Didion and Babbitts by Lily Anilick. I kind of hated this book. I've heard kind of mixed things from people. Some people really liked it and were hooked on just like the history aspect of it. Some of the more positive reviews I saw for it did appreciate the framing of like, okay, like maybe Eve Babbitts Okay, background on this. Before I just get into books and start talking about them without you knowing what they are. Didion and Babbitts is a sort of biography of both Eve Babbitts and Joan Didion. Eve Babbitts and Joan Didion are, of course, if you're on Substack, two of the foremost, like, California female writers of, like, the 60s through 80s. I don't know. That's even, like, too loose, because, like, they also both published things in, like, the 2000s that were good, so fuck it. Joan Didion is known for her more, like, stark, like, this happened, this happened, this happened style, and I think is appreciated more for her essay work, her, like, journalistic work, like Slouching Towards Bethlehem, which is about, like, counterculture, drug culture in the 60s in San Francisco. Really good read if you haven't read it. There's an essay collection that goes with it. That's wonderful. I love Joan Didion. I love Eve Babbitts. I love them both. So it was kind of a rough read for me, given that I like them both. And then Eve Babbitts, just to give context, more of the party girl to Joan Didion's, like, I'm a serious writer. And that's not to say that Babbitts isn't, like, a serious writer, just that her reputation is more that she has an informal style, that her style is more, like, emotional, more, like, stream of consciousness. And her work is, like, usually not... It's autofiction, I would say. Like, she has straightforward essays, but her fiction is more autofiction than I would say Didion's work is autofiction when it's fiction. That being said, Annalik traces both writers through the time that they knew each other, which was when Babbitts was just starting out in her career, and onward. And Didion was already, like, married to her husband, like, a successful writer, was more of a screenwriter at that, well, she was doing both, but a screenwriter at that point in time. So, like, very successful, wealthier, whatever. And just kind of comparing and contrasting their lives and the letters that they had exchanged with each other, because she found them in an archive. For context, Annalik is Eve Babbitts's biographer, which has granted her a lot of privileged access to Eve Babbitts' life materials. And in, like, the back of a closet, she found a bunch of stuff, comparing and contrasting lifestyles, the ways that they worked, their relationships with men. And really, that's my biggest bugbear with the book, is that I didn't like how it compared and contrasted their relationships with men and the takeaways it had from it. There's a point in the book where Annalik interviews one of the men that Joan Didion used to be involved with before her husband. His name is Noah Parmentel, and he kind of takes credit for her work a little bit. Like, he's like, yeah, I edited her, and, like, she was really inspired by our relationship, and, like, I wasn't very happy about it, blah, blah, blah. And that's just kind of, like, fucked up. Like, frankly, if you're not willing to say, like, that Eve Babbitts was inspired by the men in her life in the same kind of way, you probably shouldn't say it about Joan Didion. I don't know. And also, like, is that such a bad thing? I don't know. It just really paints Joan as this, like, cold woman who, you know, didn't have the time of day for Eve, didn't have the time of day for people in her life. And, like, that's why her daughter was, like, addicted to alcohol. And, like, did you know her husband, like, was probably gay? And it's like, what does any of this really have to do with the relationship between Eve and Joan, you know? Anyway, I just felt the way that it compared and contrasted them was inappropriate, and that it really existed as a way to elevate Eve over Joan as, like, the premier California writer, and I don't like that. I think that that's weird, and I think that they're both equally good writers with a lot to offer the literary canon. So, fuck it. Like, sorry, maybe that's a shallow takeaway from the book. Maybe I was just put off by the Noah Parmentel interviews. But it's just tough when you interview an ex-boyfriend from Joan and your takeaway is he helped her. And your takeaway from interviewing a boyfriend of Eve Babbitts who also says he helped her, and you're like, but that's not true. Because Eve was a good woman. And it's like, well... come on, not to be corny, don't pit women against other women. I think it's weird. It is a good history of both of the writers. Obviously, she has a lot of first sources, which is great. So if you want to get, like, a good overview of the two writers, I think it's a good place to start. I would not end there if I were you, and I would obviously prioritize actually reading their work. over any biographical details. You know what? This is the first entry, meth behavior. Because I think also that Lily Anna like has a bone to pick with Joan of some sort that isn't fully revealed in the book. And I think that's meth behavior. So this is a D. Next one, also in the pile, just so I don't forget it, is My Brilliant Friend and the sequel of the 4 novels, Story of a New Name. I read both of those this year. I love these. I can't say enough good things about these books. It really made me excited to read more Elena Ferrante. I had read The Lying Lives of Adults previously, like a couple years ago, and I thought it was fine. I wasn't like blown away by it or anything, but I do think My Brilliant Friend and Story of a New Name are much better versions of what she's doing in that book. Both books are about the life of 2 characters, Elena and Lila. I say Lila, my friend says Lila. I'm gonna go with Lila because it sounds more Italian to me. But 2 friends who grew up together, and we literally watched them from like the first time they meet each other through like kind of until the friendship ends for mysterious reasons, which is hinted at in the prologue of the first book. But in the first book, My Brilliant Friend, we track their childhood through like their early teen years, like going into like university. There's so much in there that is like violent and heartbreaking and fucked up, and then so much that's like so sweet, and like there are descriptions of interactions between the girls that reflect things that have happened in my own relationships with my female friends that I have never seen anywhere else and have only been reflected there. And I think that that's kind of amazing. I like that I felt like I was learning more about like Italian culture, especially in Naples, which is where it takes place. I didn't realize that it was kind of like fucked up like that. I guess that's my own naivete in that regard. Yeah, there's a lot of like people involved in like the mob and being like mob adjacent and what that looks like in their neighborhood because they grew up in a poorer neighborhood of Naples, how that affects, you know, their education and how they split off in terms of education and what that looks like, getting married early versus not getting married early, and how those things like affect their relationship as 2 women who like get pitted against each other a lot, especially in their neighborhood. Anyway, these books are beautiful and I would really recommend them to anybody. I think that they are an achievement, and I can't believe that it's so specific sometimes. Like there's even a quote in the second book that's like, she's talking about how someone has talked about her writing, because like it's not autobiographical, but it is written that way, where she writes a book in the second book when she's like in college and out of college. That is like, there's something on every page that is so like stunningly beautiful and like takes you out of your body. And that is true about these actual books. She was so astute that she wrote that into her own book. That's like fucked up. Second book is also full of like drama and juice, and yeah, I love them. I think they're really cool. I think it's a really good mix of like high-low art. Yeah, only good things to say. This is an A. Both books are an A. A is kind of like a new favorite category. It's like, this actually kind of changed the way I think about something. Like, that's a great book. Both of those go in there. Next one, also a very good one, The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir. I had never read any Simone de Beauvoir before. That's my bad. I should probably read The Second Sex at some point. This is a short story collection. There's 3 short stories all about aging women. So this is also one of the books in my like theme of the year that I wanted to check out. I loved this one. The first short story is about a professor who she just finds herself aging, and she's like nearing retirement, and we kind of see like her thought process through like I think it's like a day or a couple days where she's like feeling ignored by her husband, and she just feels like a sitting duck and like she's aging out, you know? I thought that was really interesting and fun. Not fun to read about, but like it reassuring in a way, maybe. Second one is about a woman whose children are taken from her, I believe. I found that one really depressing and harder to read, but also I thought the prose was kind of experimental, so still worth a read. And then the last one is why this is gonna go in the A category, which is that it is about a woman whose husband basically says like, you have to be okay with the fact that I'm gonna have an affair. And then we watch as this woman goes through this process of like feeling jealous, feeling abandoned, feeling like more okay with it and then not okay with it, and feeling like she has no right to not feel okay about it. This is a very French thing to have happen to you. I will also admit on camera right now that this is a thing that has happened to me, not with a husband, but with my first boyfriend. And yeah, basically I was told that I had to be okay with it, and I didn't have, even in modern day, me being like a feminist was like, I guess I have to be okay with it because like this is like the sex positive thing to do, and this is like the right thing to do because like I care about this person. And actually it's not, and you should kill them. And I think Simone de Beauvoir would probably agree with me that like that's actually kind of a fucked up and evil thing to do to someone. So yeah, because that last story so reflected my own experience with that exact thing happening to me, I'm gonna have to give this one 5 stars because that was nuts. Like there were multiple times where I read it where I was like, I had chills, I was near tears, I was like experiencing flashbacks of like the LSD variety. So I gotta give this one an A. I gotta give this one an A. It was amazing. Feminist text right here. Yeah, we'll be reading more of Simone de Beauvoir in the future. Let's skip this around so there's not so many like bangers at the front. This is Love Junkie by Robert Plunkett. This one is about a rich woman in New York in the 80s who falls in love with a gay porn star. She like falls in with his friends and essentially funds a film for them because she's in love with this guy who clearly will never love her back. But she, you know, she's like married to this guy who doesn't really pay attention to her, and she's exploring herself in a very goofy way. It's more of a critique on like women fetishizing gay men and also like rich women fetishizing gay men. It's really funny. It's a satire, obviously. Very 80s vibes. I think it was published in the early 90s, but like fresh off the 80s. We're kind of approaching the AIDS epidemic in this book, so it gets touched on a bit at the end. In not like a too upsetting way, but like it is in there. And yeah, so just warning there. But mostly very funny. A lot of references I probably didn't get because I was not a gay person in the 80s. But that's okay. I was looking up things, I was learning things, and that's cool. I really recommend this if you're into funny gay books, especially ones that are a little more sophisticated. I'm gonna give this one a C. I liked it. I don't know if I need to read it again. I love the cover. It's a good one. It's good. Next up we have Trespasses, a novel by Louise Kennedy. This one really frustrated me. There were so many aspects of this book that I liked, and there were just as many aspects that I could not stand. On the list of things I could not stand, the fact that she keeps talking about her love interest as like a big old man, and she's like, I love my big old man. And I, frankly, sorry to big old men, have no interest in that. And that's kind of the main thing that I was supposed to find attractive about him. So that didn't really work for me, considering this is kind of a romance. It is like lit fic, but it is very much situated around this affair that's happening between a Protestant and a Catholic in Ireland in the 70s. So the Troubles. You can see how this would be problematic. Also because he's married and old and she's young and not married. You know, it's kind of a like, what's right? What's wrong? Why are people fighting? You know, how are normal, quote unquote, normal people like who were caught up in this fighting affected? And I think that part of it was much more effective. I felt like I got a better understanding of how people living in that time would have gone about their days and how it would have affected them. I feel much more educated on the topic having read this. I will say it does kind of skip over some details, so I had to look it up. There's a lot of Irish slang in here as well. I don't think this was really edited from the original printing for American audiences, which is cool, but it also meant that there were some things where I was like, this prose isn't really making any sense to me, and I couldn't tell, and I still can't really tell if that's because some of it was genuinely unclear, or if it was because I don't know sentence structure for the Irish versus me, a dumb American. So that was tough sometimes. I also thought the prose was a little boring, just in general. It wasn't too descriptive. It left a lot of gaps for me. It was hard for me to imagine things sometimes. So this one's a D, I think. No. I will say the last 50 pages really hooked me, and I thought it tied things up in a really beautiful way that did emotionally affect me. I don't think it was enough, ultimately. Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. This book was kind of awesome. I read it in early winter of last year, so like around this time. It was a much colder winter last year, and this book takes place in the winter in what country? Poland. It's about an old woman, so once again, this is part of my theme. An older woman who is interested in like astrology and poetry, and she has all these very outdoorsy, like I'm one with nature hobbies. She's an animal activist. She loves animals. She's a vegan, and there are a bunch of murders happening in her village that she decides she's going to investigate. There is an unreliable narrator component. There is a lot of atmospheric, we're walking through the woods and we find a body, like stuff like that, like very much like a mystery, but very well written, very well done. Winner of the Nobel Prize of Literature. So, you know, Nobel Prize can't be wrong, unless sometimes it is. I don't know. I really did like the prose. I really liked the arc of it, I guess, finding out little by little like what was going on. So I would definitely recommend this one. This one's a B. I liked it a lot. I don't think I would call it a favorite, especially because I'm not vegan and I thought some of what it had to say about hunting was a little extreme, but I really liked it and it did make me think about those things. Yeah, if you're looking for like an atmospheric winter read, I think you can't really do any better than this. Next up, we got a real stinker, folks. And this that pains me to say. I might regret this. Essays, Drawings, Vulnerabilities, and Other Stuff by Abby Jacobson. I am a Broad City fan. It's not like my favorite show in the world, but it is like in rotation, you know? So I wanted to read this because I was like, hey, maybe, you know, I'll learn something more about Abby. Turns out there's not a lot to learn about Abby. Abby had a pretty boring life, which she admits in the book. That's fine. This is mostly about her breakup from Carrie Brownstein, which she does not name by name, but it's Carrie Brownstein, and her road trip that she takes after that breakup and preceding the last season of Broad City to kind of recenter herself. And I just didn't really feel like I learned anything about her that was that important. I didn't feel like I learned anything about life or about moving on from a breakup or about moving on from a chapter in your life. And most essays ended on like a dull note that told me nothing. Like there was one that really pissed me off. Like she goes to an aura reader, like one of those cameras that like gives you an aura, whatever. And she like talks to like a psychic or whatever. And it just says, and then the psychic like told me stuff and I started crying and like, I guess that's why you should go to a psychic. And it's like, that doesn't, like, you didn't really describe anything that happened here. There are kind of some maybe interesting essays in here, but it's just not worth it. I thought it was really dull. She's not a very good writer, unfortunately. It's not funny. Like, it's not a funny read. I didn't even find it very charming. So it kind of soured me on Broad City, even, which I hate to say. Like, I was like, I hated it that much. So this is an F. This is who's... Hands up if you're suffering.
All right, clap if you think she should suffer.
Let's see. Bonjour Tristesse. This is a French novella from the 60s. It is by Francois. Wow, I'm really bad at pronouncing French, so if I fuck this up, let me know. Francois Sagan. But this is about a vacation that a girl and her dad take to the French Riviera, and it so much doesn't happen, but also happens. He has a girlfriend, and then he has another girlfriend. Her dad starts off with a girlfriend that she's like cool with because like they let her do whatever she wants, and she's like seeing this guy that she's like, I'm probably gonna lose my virginity to, whatever. And then like her mom's dead. Her mom's ex-friend like comes and joins and then like fucks everything up, and then everything gets like dark and weird and like psychosexual. So if you're into a darker summer beach read, I would really recommend picking this up for the summertime specifically, because it is such a like, we're laying on the beach and we have a conversation that's intellectual on the beach. And I really like reading those. So summer read for sure, recommend. There's a lot of stuff where she's like, I need to control my dad. So whatever that does for you, that's there. I really like this one. This one's a B. This was fun. Okay, this is the first of this author that's going to be on this list. Abigail by Magda Szabo. This is a Hungarian writer that I got acquainted with this year and loved. So Abigail was the first book that I read. This is sort of a, I guess, like YA book. This would be the only YA book on the list, I think. It is published by New York Review of Books Classics. So, you know, it's like a classy YA. It takes place in a Hungarian girls' school out in the boonies, essentially. This girl who is used to living in the city gets sent to the school by her dad kind of like at zero notice. And she's like all pissed off about it. She doesn't want to like learn from these people. She thinks she's kind of too good for it. And like over time, like as her relationship with the girls gets like worse, she kind of feels like, was I mean to people, you know? Very like Harry Potter vibes, honestly. Like there's a lot of like, we walked around the castle and we took classes in the castle, and there's like prefects and stuff that like get involved in like the kids' drama. But the backdrop of this is World War II. So her dad is like in a political situation, which is why he sent her away. And it's very sad. There's a lot of sad stuff in here. Without spoiling anything, I think this is a beautiful book. I did read on the Wikipedia page for it that I guess it's like the most popular book in Hungary. Like they love it. And I can totally understand why. It really does scan as like a children's classic. And I do wish that I had read it when I was that age, because I think I would have really connected with it. It does have some girls doing the Nazi salute on the front cover. It is not pro-Nazi. I'm going to tell you that right now, just in case you got worried. There ends up being some like espionage in it related to the war. So also if that's of interest to you, that's in there. And yeah, just some like harsh realities of what it would have been like to live in that time period, especially if your parents or family was involved in some anti-Nazi activities. I really liked this one. Totally recommend it. If anybody watching has a preteen daughter, Abigail. Banana Yashimoto, Kitchen. This one was really making the rounds on like book talk, book Instagram, like earlier this year. I picked it up. I was not expecting it to be so, I guess like about, I wasn't expecting it to be about grief. But I really liked the way that it approached grief. It was sort of like, you know, how do we feel happy again after something really bad happens? And I think that it tackles that issue with a lot of grace and a lot of youthfulness, which is kind of sweet. You don't see that a lot. I think a lot of books about grief are trying to emphasize how wise the characters are by the end of it. And that's not really the point of Kitchen. The point of Kitchen is really just to be like, how are you going to feel better today? And that's a very easy step to take, I think. And that's more of the kind of arc that most people go through in grief, I think. Especially if they're young, which these characters are. But yeah, this girl's grandmother dies. She's been living with her grandmother her entire life, so she goes to live with this boy from school and his trans mother, which this is from the 80s, so that's like, I mean, maybe I'm just mistaken on how progressive Japan was in the 80s, but like that feels like a little bit progressive because it's never really questioned. Like it's just like, hi, my mom is here. Did you know she's actually like a dude? Which I guess is not very progressive, but at the time, it was a little progressive, and I really liked it. I thought it was really funny sometimes. I thought it was sad in all the right ways. I liked the romance at the center of the main story. There's two stories in here actually, and both were a little bit like queer coded. So definitely recommend this one. This one also gets a high B. Not like a favorite or anything, but I really loved reading it, and it was a quick read. Let's move on to The Rachel Incident by Carolina Donahue. This is another Irish one. I was kind of on an Irish kick this year. I read this one and Trespasses right next to each other, and I liked this one a lot more than Trespasses. This one was more funny. It is about a girl and her gay best friend and the hijinks they get into, how their lives intersect with a professor that the female lead has. She has a crush on him, things go crazy, there's blackmail, there's like affairs, there's like crazy stuff happening in this book. But I think there's also a lot of sweet stuff in this book, like the friendship at the center of it feels very real to me, made me think a lot about my own friends, blasted through this one. Delicious, delicious. It also takes place in the 2008 financial crisis. So once again, a little more context on how that affected Ireland. And that was kind of interesting to read about. Added a little bit of layer to it that I think made the book more interesting, especially when she's talking about like getting out of college and like trying to find a job and like what that looked like. Quite relatable. I graduated in 2020, so like I get it, girl. This one was just a delight, so this is a B. Also definitely recommend if you're looking for something that is like lighthearted but like not stupid. Like I didn't feel at any point like this was trying to handhold me in any way. Like it gave me some gray areas for like morally and was like, and we're gonna sit with that. And I think that that's kind of awesome, actually. So this book is really good. This is a B. Let's go with another stinker, shall we? This one is Silly Boy, a novel. You might even judge me for picking this one up, but I like to torture myself a little bit, and this was at my local bookstore. This is by Peter Vack, who goes by Master of Cum on Instagram. He is also an actor who has been in such movies as The Code with Dasha Nekrasova. I picked this one up because the blurbs on the back were Madeline Cash, star of the moment, Madeline Cash, but I actually really liked her short story collection last year. A blurb from Dasha Nekrasova, which is not a glowing recommendation, but I was like, listen, if I'm gonna torture myself, like, this might be the way to go. And then also Alex Ross Perry, whose films I like. So I was like, what's going on here? What's happening here? Also this, like, AI-ass, like, generated cover. Like, look at her hands. Look at her hands, guys. This book sucked. I love supporting, like, an indie publisher. This is Cash for Gold Books. This is nothing against Cash for Gold Books. I just think that this book was bad. I think it needed some editing. The premise is that a struggling actor entering his 30s is dating a young tattoo artist in her early 20s. And they are very jealous of one another. Both have been unfaithful to each other, and yet they are very vindictive about the other person for, like, potentially having cheated. It's very much like, damn, isn't dating shitty now? Doesn't the internet make dating worse? And it's like, yeah. Like, you're making a good point about that and how, like, looking at someone's Instagram all day is gonna, like, drive you insane. And, like, maybe you shouldn't be looking at girls on the phone all day, and maybe you shouldn't be, like, trying to, like, get into your significant other's phone to, like, see who they've texted. Like, yeah, the digital age does make it worse, but at the same time, the way this was written was just so insufferable. The characters were so insufferable, and, like, yes, that is the point, but, like, at what point is that a good point, you know? There's also a lot of, like, I'm writing a screenplay, and it's like a cancelable screenplay. Did you know that I wrote slurs into my screenplay? And it's like, can we sit with why that matters? Why you want to make that point? Like, Quentin Tarantino has done that for years. Did I think this one was interesting? Sometimes. A lot of points of it, no. And I think the ultimate takeaway I had was that this person, because this is like a very thinly veiled autofiction situation, and or maybe that's just what he wants me to think. I don't know. I think this person has issues with his parents, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. And you should read the book to understand what I mean by that, but also you shouldn't read the book because you shouldn't torture yourself to the degree that I tortured myself to finish this book. And it sucks because there are some points of this that are, like, vaguely interesting, more on, like, the masculinity front. Like, you can tell that he does think about this in a critical way, but it just doesn't ever come to a conclusion that I found interesting or satisfying. I will say this book mentions Future's DS2 a lot, Dirty Sprite 2. That's a good record. So if there's one thing about this book that did work for me, it is the amount of Future DS2 references that are inside of it. Anyway, this is an F.
Tougher.
All right, we got Convenience Store Woman. Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This book is about a woman who works at a convenience store and loves that shit. She runs that shit like the Navy. She is like, why does everybody want me to get married? Why do people want me to not work at a convenience store? This is the pinnacle of life. And it follows her journey in exploring those ideas. This book would have worked for me a lot better if it had stayed in the convenience store. Unfortunately, we get to a point in the book where, like, you know, you need a plot. And I get that. And a lot of this plot revolves around what expectations around marriage are in Japan. You know, everybody wants her to settle down and get married and find a man who will take care of her so she doesn't have to work in a convenience store. So she's like, maybe I should try dating. And that just, like, goes so south. Like, there's, like, some, like, chud freak that she, like, takes in. And I just found that really unpleasant to read about. And it wasn't really making any points for me that weren't already, like, apparent about why you shouldn't date men like that, or, like, why women shouldn't just settle down with someone, you know? It was kind of unfortunate for me. I didn't think the prose was that interesting. I liked the character. I just thought that the situations she was put in were kind of just, like, not as interesting as the convenience store part of it. Like, maybe I wanted to learn more about this, like, clearly autistic woman who is really in love with this convenience store. Let's sit with that. Let's sit with that theme and let that breathe. So unfortunately, this one's a lot of people are going to get mad at me about that. I know this is a very beloved book, and there were parts of it that I liked. I did enjoy the act of reading it. I just think once I sat with it, I was like, and what was that? We got a few books left, and then, let's get some of the ones that are in my brain, because not every book on this list is physically with me right now. So one is Bad Behavior by Mary Gateskill. This was one that I really liked when I was reading it because I liked the prose, I liked the ideas. But after I had finished it, I sat there and was like really depressed because I think I zoomed through it too fast, which is my fault. Because all these stories, it's a short story collection, are about like taboos and like breaking sexual taboos, breaking like family taboos. I think she approached them in a very interesting way. Like a lot of them are about like sex work, a lot of them are about people dating and then like getting into like extra relational things, or couples trying out kinky stuff, like stuff that is not really like, listen, I don't live a crazy life. So it's interesting. Some of the characters felt evil to me, and I do appreciate when a writer can convey evil. One of the stories in it is Secretary, which the movie with Maggie Gyllenhaal is based on. Just because I think back on it with like a pit of like disgust in my stomach, I don't feel like I can rate it an A. That has nothing to do with how good it is. If anything, it's good. It's like, if you can do that to me, you did something kind of amazing. I think with The Craft, I'm not going to rank that as a favorite because I felt icky after I read it. And like, I can totally imagine the kind of person that, like, that short story collection is for. So I'm going to rank it as a B, because it is very good. It just was not, like, I think for me, ultimately. The other one I don't have with me because my friend lent it to me is Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. This was my, like, main October read because I wanted to do something, like, spooky this year. And I had never read the Twilight books before, believe it or not. So this was my first foray, and honestly, it was not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Like, not even the prose was that bad. Like, there's shit on this list that is worse than Stephanie Meyer. What's the hate, you guys? It's like a perfectly fine YA. I liked that a lot of it was sort of slice of lifey, like Bella goes to school. I'm at school right now, and I like this guy, but he doesn't seem to like me. Why is he leaving all the time? Is it because I smell? And it's like, that's funny. All of this is really funny to read about, especially as an adult now. And like her getting really infatuated with Edward, like I felt that. That was real. The problem with the book is that the vampire shit makes no sense. It is kind of poorly done. And the end, the last like 40 pages where it's like, we have to run from the other vampires because they're going to kill Bella, who's special for some reason. Like, it kind of wears out its welcome. I don't really find the, like, let's go to Arizona thing. It lost me. It lost me. I know that's, like, supposed to be the main action of the book. I didn't care. I cared about how this girl was falling in love with a vampire in Forks, Washington. So, do I need to read the rest? I don't know. But, that first, like, 120, 200 something pages, delicious. So this is going to be a C. Not an amazing book by any means. Honestly, quite bad in some respects, but not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Moving on to the books that are here, because we're really getting through this list now, you guys. We got The Summer Book by Tove Jansson. You got Jansson? My thing is that Finnish language doesn't make any sense to me. I know Tuva because of Tuvalu, who is Swedish. And those are all the same kind of language to me. This is by the lady who wrote The Moomins. It is a book about a grandmother and her granddaughter living on an island in the summer after the girl's mother has passed away. The old woman is also kind of nearing the end of her life. She's not like sick or anything, but like she's thinking about it, So this was another one that was on theme, and I loved it. I thought this was really cute. I was very close with my grandmother when I was a little girl, and a lot of this reminded me of the ways that I would play with her. There's a lot of like, let's humor the little girl and do a little imaginary scenario for her that's like just going to teach her about the world. And I think that that's really sweet. This is still a book for adults for sure. Like, it's more from the grandmother's perspective and her thoughts on like nearing the end of her life and watching a young girl grow up and like enter the world. So if you're looking for something more contemplative, but also obviously summery, would totally recommend it. It sort of reads like a short story collection because they are just like vignettes, that, chapters that are vignettes, but it all takes place in the same world with the same characters. So, yeah, kind of like a cute but melancholy read, that I would really recommend if you want something kind of like lighter but thoughtful. And so this is a B. This is a high B. I'm gonna end this with bangers only. So I'm gonna show the last book that I don't like. And I'm sorry that I don't like it, because a lot of people do. She's on Substack, so I'm sorry if you're seeing this. I think that you very clearly are a good writer. Like, this has nothing to do with the prose. This has nothing to do with the way it was constructed. And it has everything to do with me and my preferences on genre. Because I realized in reading this that I don't actually like speculative fiction. This book is about a world in which a famous artist who is sort of a David Bowie if he was Susan Sontag, which is a crazy premise. If that kind of person existed, and also if that kind of person came from what is a broken off southern United States that has become its own hyper-religious, like, hyper-fascist country that broke off after World War II in response to the rest of the country becoming more, like, socialist. And then I think the West Coast is also its own thing. It's, like, kind of like the Wild West still, which is weird, but whatever. I just kind of didn't fuck with it. I think it's because I had a problem with the premise of the southern United States breaking off after World War II. I just don't really see a world in which that would have happened, and that kind of broke the premise for me. It seems like something that would have happened a little bit later and not in a time that is so like historically known for being like somewhat unified. That's my own problem and me lacking imagination to imagine such a thing. But also I wasn't as crazy about the things that she did with the historical figures that do appear in the book. Some instances are Connie Converse, David Bowie is in there. A lot of the quotations from X are taken from Susan Sontag's diaries or like other writings, I think. The way it's all woven in is like obviously impressive, and I don't think I could personally do it as a writer. Maybe if I tried really hard for like 10 years, but like this was not written in 10 years. This is a writer who like kind of infamously publishes a lot of books. So I'm impressed by that, I will say. It just didn't really work for me. And like emotionally as a story, because it is about a widow doing a reflection on her wife's life and going back and like quite literally tracing a biography of X. X is the name of the artist that she was married to. I didn't really feel emotionally connected to these people by the end of it. I was frustrated by that. There are a lot of name drops in here. Like I just saw like Durga Chubose. It's tough that I didn't like this because it has a lot of ingredients that seem like they would work for me. There's a very impressive notes section and like bibliography in the back. And that is about all I can say about it that is good, because I just did not connect with it. And I was not a fan of the things that were done with the things that are in the back. They did not enrich the real texts for me. Like, it did not enrich my view of David Bowie. It did not enrich my view of Susan Sontag's words. Who all is even quoted in here? We got Rachel Cusk. I guess it doesn't enrich my view of these artists because in this world, they are all done by one artist. And unfortunately, the work of Connie Converse, the work of like Abbas Kiarostami, the work of Susan Sontag, the work of David Bowie are all individual, and they don't need to play off of each other because they say a lot about the worlds and the context in which those artists lived. And it does nothing for me to pretend that they belong to a different person who is kind of an asshole and belongs to a world that does not exist. That maybe that's my lack of imagination once again, but like I find those artists interesting on their own without fitting it into this like narrative situation. Anyway, this is a D, unfortunately. Norwegian Wood, Haruki Murakami. Not to out myself as like a pseudo-intellectual, but I liked this a lot. This is the first Murakami I have read, so maybe everybody has this kind of response to the first Murakami that they read, but I thought this was fun. I thought it was very dreamy. I thought that it painted a world that I wanted to visit, even though it's quite sad most of the time and everybody's kind of going through terrible things. It really made me feel like I was like going to college in Japan in the era in which it was written. Well, it wasn't written in the era in which it takes place. The era in which it takes place, which is the 70s. Late 60s. Compare and contrast to Biography of X. This is an instance in which the music that is mentioned in the book enriched the way in which I thought about the song. Because Norwegian Wood didn't really... that was a song, the Beatles song, that I was not particularly drawn to until I read this book and I was like, damn, actually, that's kind of a good song. I really liked this. Just the fact that it painted such a world for me and I really felt lost in it and I felt connected to the people within it, that earns a lot of points for me. I will say, and it's been said about him, the way he writes women, I understand now. That is kind of fucked up. I was not a fan of some of the things he did with those characters, and some things did not need to be there, but I liked it a lot and I would read it again. So that counts for something, I think. Yeah, especially like considering he's writing about like his own generation, like boomer, he's a boomer. To make me sympathize with boomers a little bit. You know, you're doing the work. So this is gonna get an A, controversially. I really liked it. Don't come for me on that. Where else are we? I have 2 favorites that I'm saving for last. No, I have 3 favorites that I'm saving for last. So I'm gonna put this one. Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte. This is my first time reading this, actually. Of the like Regency era writers, Emily Bronte is the one that I've really not tried, and that's because this is her only book. But also because I kind of thought Wuthering Heights was like a romance. That is obviously kind of the problem with how it is often talked about, notoriously, and I knew that, so I was like, I know this is more of like a gothic thing, and that concept never really appealed to me. That being said, I love Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte, obviously, and I love other books of that era. Like, I used to be really into Jane Austen and stuff, so I'm like, this is like something that I should realistically enjoy. Maybe I'm collapsing those eras a bit, but I don't think I am. It did take me a second to get into the prose. It is much more like, I don't even know how to phrase it. It's real prosy. To show my lack of vocabulary, but I really enjoyed reading it once I acclimated to it. And there's like, also, it's difficult because there are a couple characters that have like accents, and it's like written into the book that they have accents. So, you know, I was repeating things sometimes and having to go back and be like, what did he just say? But, you know, we got through it. Yeah, I really learned to enjoy the way that it was written and to kind of fall into the rhythm of it. And I liked that it didn't. Like, a lot of these books, even the ones I liked, I like picking out when authors use the same phrases over and over. And a lot of these books would use the same shit repeatedly. Every single paragraph, every single piece of dialogue is unique. And all of this is making me sound really stupid, and that's fine. I'm not smart enough to write a book like Wuthering Heights, and that's okay. Neither is anybody else on this list, I don't think, because this is a human marvel, and that's fine. But yeah, this book is about Kathy and Heathcliff, and they are childhood sweethearts, kind of, until she marries somebody else. There's some to the era cultural stuff that I was telling myself I was going to investigate, in terms of like, how were marriages brokered? What's going on? He was adopted by her father. I don't think there would have been any concerns about it being like incestual, because like obviously they weren't blood related and people did incest all the time back then. She chooses to marry somebody else. That's really heartbreaking for him. Things go wrong. There's generational trauma in this book, which is a concept that did not exist when this was written. So I'm kind of impressed that that's something that's in this book. We really explore how what happened with them affects the next generation. And that is the part that I did not know was in this book and was much more interesting and really deepened the story of the original characters. There is like obviously a romantic element. I would not call it, you know, there is like a deep love and obsession at the center of it that is like gross. Like a lot of this book feels gross. Like every character at some point is going through some like horrible emotional thing, and you just like have to sit with them in that reality, and like how they deepen each other's misery. It's a very miserable book to read, actually, but I loved it. It feels evil a lot of the time. Like, once again, like the Mary Gateskill book, like it feels evil to read, but I thought that this was a fun evil. It is like, once again, like gothic literature. So it's like, we're in a castle-y kind of house, and everybody's just kind of like grumbling around and being like, well, everybody dies. And it's like, that's nuts. You guys are nuts. Everybody in this book's kind of crazy, and that rocks. It really kind of made me excited for the movie and what the movie's going to do for it. Controversially, even if they make it a romance, like I want to see what she's doing with it. I liked it. This is an A. It's a great book. It's a classic for a reason. and I had a good time reading it. So I was also glad that I read this in like November because it was a good like fall, like moody read. Moving through it. The Copenhagen Trilogy by Tuva Ditlevsen. This is our second Tuva of the night. It is actually 3 books in one. Childhood, Youth, and Dependency. Sort of, actually very similarly to My Brilliant Friend. This chronicles one girl's life through her entire life. This one is actually autobiographical. There is no pretense that it is anything but autobiographical. It is very much about Tuva Ditlevsen's life. She lived in Copenhagen, obviously, around 1920 to like, I think she killed herself in the 70s or something. But this traces about through the 70s, I think. That doesn't seem right. This traces almost to the 60s, I think. But it really goes through her like living in the red light district when she was a kid and on to become like a writer despite those odds, like really valuing like becoming a good writer, becoming a good poet. She was more of a poet before she wrote this. What it looked like to become a writer during World War II, especially as her country was like descending into like Nazism, and what that looked like. She is very frank in a lot of it. The way I kept thinking about it to myself is that it was sort of like a frigid romanticism. Like she has kind of an open heart and like falls into multiple marriages through the course of this book, but she is also like guarded and is ultimately like in service of her work. And you can see that consistently through all 3 of the books until her life takes a darker turn. And the Dependency is about her drug addiction, which is not present in the second 2 books. She gets addicted to drugs on purpose by her husband, who drugs her, which is also nuts. It's crazy that that's a thing that you could do. Your doctor would be like, yeah, you can keep giving your wife heroin. Who cares, you know? So this was a very enlightening read on that front, but also I really related to the first 2 books. I like writing, and it really reflected a lot of the ways that I thought about myself in relation to others, both good and bad, growing up, because I had a love of reading, because I had a love of writing that other people didn't understand, and especially in her context where like, you know, her parents weren't like educated, right? So they didn't think that this was an avenue for her. I just found all of that really heartwarming to read about, that she like kind of beat the odds and like did become a writer and did forge her own path in an era where like that was not really encouraged for women. So you know, I loved reading this. It really put me in her life. I think that she describes things in a really wonderful way. I'm currently reading the Karl Ove Knausgaard books, My Struggles, you know. I'm reading the first one, and it reminds me a lot of this, actually. And I think some of the recommendations, or I think some of the reviews in the front do also compare it to that. I think the writing style is quite similar, but this is obviously a more female lens. And I guess there are slight cultural differences between Denmark and Norway. So, yeah, I really liked reading this, and it's going to stick with me for a long time. I think about her a lot, and I feel bad that her life turned out the way that it did, because I think that she was someone who showed a lot of promise and was very, very good at what she did. And it is a shame that a lot of women got treated the way that they did back then. So this one sticks with me. I loved it. This is an A. This is actually might be my favorite book. I think it's tied with the other one that I'm going to mention that I don't have on me because I lend it out to friends all the time, which probably means that I like the other one more. So whatever. This is my second favorite. The Door by Magda Szabo. Again, this is about a writer. This is supposed to be, I think, sort of semi-autobiographical, auto-fictional, I guess, about a writer in Hungary in the 80s who takes on a cleaning lady, and they have intersecting lives that, you know, because they have different morals. It kind of reminded me of the relationship between Miranda and Magda in Sex and the City. You have like this academic who's very like driven to, you know, get her work done and be like a member of like the social elite, contrasted against this older woman who lived through like very rough times in history, right? Because like Hungary in World War II, obviously not a good time, and who had a very tough life, who has like a religious outlook, who has like this more conservative outlook, how those two women and those two lives intersect, and how their relationship is affected by those differences. They butt heads a lot. They're also like very good friends. There's sort of like a mother-daughter relationship that happens. There are betrayals. There are like beautiful things that they do for each other. And just that tracking of like, it's like a 20 or 30 year span that happens in this book where they just know each other and live with each other essentially and do things for each other. I thought it was really beautiful. This was in the Understanding Older Women canon. And I thought the way it was wrapped up was heartbreaking. It did make me cry. And I loved it. I loved it. I like a book that's about women. I like a book that's about women interacting and having very different lives. And I liked learning about both of their lives, and I liked knowing that no one was really wrong and no one was really right either, and that like history shapes the way that we love one another. So I cannot recommend this enough. I just think this is about humanity, and a lot of these books I would say are about like the human experience, and I think that this one kind of does it the most succinctly. This is not a long book. It fits a lot into these like, what, like 200 something pages? 259 pages. This book feels so much longer than that because it just, every single page is like, there's a new drama, there's a new thing that's happening in someone's life. It's a very like emotionally honest book that wants you to think about your life and how it affects others. So yeah, I love this book. This is an A. And my last A and my last book, I think I might have forgotten some, to be honest with you. They're like around. If there was anything else, it did not impress me that much, and it was not that bad either, so it doesn't really matter. The only remaining book is All Fours by Miranda July. This was my first read of the year last year, and it was my favorite one. And that book slaps. That is a crazy ass book. That is a book that someone, Miranda July, would have had to write in a moment of inspiration that most people never experience in their lives. A moment of like artistic and emotional freedom that is enviable, I think. That book is amazing. It is about an artist who goes on a road trip and gets sidetracked, and that sidetracking is the rest of the book and like sets in motion like so many crazy changes for her, and how she sees herself, especially as a woman like entering like perimenopause. This is what kicked off my whole like women aging thing, because I was like, holy shit, there's a whole other life out there for me that isn't being a young woman and that might be just as enriching, if not more so, because you get to know yourself and you get to learn things about the world and how you fit into it. All Fours is fucking awesome. It is so funny. It is so honest. It is, once again, another book that like takes you seriously and like wants you to take yourself seriously and is asking you really tough questions about your life, how you fit into it, how you think about yourself. There's so many moments in that book where I'm like, this person does not see herself in the actual reality of what her situation is, which is that she is a successful artist, but like, is she really thinking about herself that way? Like, she maybe thinks about her husband as like maybe being more so something, and like the way that changes is like crazy book. It is really the kind of book that makes you want to run into the street and start like screaming in a good way. It is a book that makes you want to start posting stuff online really inappropriately. It is the kind of book that makes you want to do things that are crazy. It's crazy. It's a crazy book. It's a crazy book. And I love that. I love that. I love when someone can just like make something, a book, a movie, whatever, that is like frees the people interacting with it. I felt like it opened up something in me that like was holding tight to like my ideas about aging, holding tight to my ideas about like what my life could look like, holding tight to ideas about, you know, just how I interact with other people and like how close you can be with people. And like, it's such a good book. It's such a good book. It is a life-changing book. So that is why it's at the top. That is why it's at the top. Recommend it to everybody, especially women, especially it is a book I would give to someone in that age group. I think I really want to, I think I'm going to probably reread it when I'm that age. I'm going to be like, you know, it's so good. It's so good, you guys. So that is my final recommendation. Hi, so here is where I stopped filming because I wanted to check what time it was and I realized it was super late and I had a bunch of texts being like, "Where are you, chica?" And I was like, wow, I should go meet my friends at the bar. So I'm gonna finish off this episode right now and also let you know that I did forget 2 books. I did forget 2 books and I'm gonna talk about them now. One of them is on my shelf over there, but I am not feeling like grabbing it because I am gonna eat. Those things have nothing to do with each other. I'm lazy right now. The 2 books I forgot, the lesser important one is called Striptease. It is by Kate Flannery, which I just saw on my shelf. This is a memoir about working at American Apparel, which I read because I want to do a podcast episode about American Apparel, the history of it. I know I've actually recorded it a couple times, and I need to re-record it because both times I was super sick and I sound gross. And also I got some information, not wrong, but like I didn't explain it in the depth that I wanted to explain it. But anyway, I read that because I wanted more context about what it was like to work at American Apparel, and also because there's a lot of good background context to the brand in that book. I liked it. I didn't think it was like amazingly written or anything, but I enjoyed hearing about it. That's maybe the wrong word to use. A lot of stuff that happened in American Apparel in the 2000s is bad. Dov Charney is gross. He took advantage of young women who worked for him. He was sleeping with a lot of his employees, and he very much wanted to normalize that. And Kate Flannery talks about how she was kind of a victim of that mindset. So if you have interest in reading, I wouldn't call it a feminist book. She keeps referring to herself as a feminist in the book, but then I never really see her back that up with any action or really even any words. She's just like, well, I went to Bryn Mawr. It's like, yeah, girl, okay, fine. I guess that makes you a feminist. But she talks a lot about basically the brainwashing tactics used internally by employees, by Dove, to convince women to take sexual pictures of themselves that the brand could then use in marketing, or to have pictures taken by Dove or any number of photographers that all use the same style. So yeah, that was more of a I am interested in this subject read. Yeah, I liked it. I would rank it like a 3. I'm not going to do any more editing here. I'm just letting you know it was a 3 out of 5. It was fine. It's a C, if you will, because I didn't feel like I would read it again, but it was interesting. I'm sure most of it is true. And yeah, I would recommend that definitely over the Netflix documentary. The Netflix documentary is super bare bones. There's some like good information at the end of that one about the lawsuits of women that claim that they were assaulted by him. So that is maybe more informative in that way. But the actual brand stuff is not very informative. So if you're interested in that, I would recommend Striptease. And my last book that I read last year of my list that is totally out of order is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. And I kind of can't believe that I forgot this. I just forgot it because my friend has it right now and it wasn't in front of me and I wasn't thinking about it. But Intermezzo is really good. I think people that don't like it just don't like reading from the perspective of men, frankly. Of people that I have talked to that don't like it, I think they go into a Sally Rooney novel expecting like a fun girly time, and this book is not a fun girly time. It is only potentially comparable to like the Brothers Karamazov, which is, I'm not saying they're on the same level at all, just like it is about 2 brothers that have different perspectives on things, and if you find that interesting, then you're gonna have a good time probably. It's also kind of about chess. It's about dating in different age. Wow, what word am I looking for here? Diverse ages. Dating people that are older or younger than you, and sort of pushing back on like the taboo on that, which I found interesting for sure. I thought it was very empathetic to everybody in the book, and I really enjoyed it. I think Sally Rooney is a great writer. I think she really pushed her prose style forward in Intermezzo, which to me makes it my favorite of her novels because you can really see her voice. You can see that she has a voice, basically. Like, all of her books previous to this do have a distinct style, like a Sally Rooney style. You know, she doesn't use quotation marks. Everything is very stark. You know, there's not a lot of interiority. It's more like this happened, this happened, this happened. But Intermezzo started to weave in that interiority in a very interesting way where it was like, he was thinking this. And then it would depending on which character was thinking that, the thought patterns looked different on the page, which is fascinating and really, really hard to do. And I loved it. I think she's an awesome writer, and I think anybody who says Sally Rooney is not a good writer just hasn't fucking sat down and read one of her books. So I loved Intermezzo. That's definitely a top 10 of the year. I'm ranking it an A, and I think the cover is awesome. Also, both the British one and the American cover I think are wonderful. Not that this is about ranking what covers look like, but I think Intermezzo is probably my favorite of the covers that I read this year. So yeah, Intermezzo, awesome. Would totally read that one again. Have thought about asking for it back from my friend because I want to read it again already. Yeah, just really enjoy it. I'm in a good mood right now, you guys. Let's finish this episode off in a good mood. I'm in a good mood because I got some good news at work today. And that like kind of never happens. So let's celebrate that. And I'm gonna eat this ramen. Hot and spicy, fiery beef that I put an egg in. And that's all. Those are the books that I read. Totally recommend the ones that I gave a B or an A. And yeah, enjoy your reading. I'm currently making my way through a bunch of Norwegian authors just for funsies. So I'll probably update on that next time I upload something. But yeah, that was last year. Great reading year. One of my best yet. And yeah, I like a book. I love a book. All right. Bye, guys.